Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today on part three of our five-part series, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice, brought to you by the National Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce and our friends at MRV Group. My name is Joe Verico, and I'm the National Director of Operations with the NPR Chamber. Again, just like to thank you for joining us. If you've registered for this webinar, you're automatically registered for our subsequent ones. We have two more in the series in the coming months. And if you registered after our first two, feel free to shoot us an email at info@NPR Chamber to get recordings of the first two entries in our webinar series. So just again, valuable content. We've been enjoying the first two, and we look forward to everything that's going to be discussed today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce everybody to Glenn Vickers of MRV Group. Glenn, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me again.
Yeah, no problem. Looking forward to today's webinar. Our members have enjoyed the first two. Just a lot of good content, a lot of stuff people aren't aware of. So again, just looking forward to today's presentation, the ones we have coming up in the coming months, and yeah, just looking forward to it. So you can take it from here, and we'll answer questions. If you have any questions for Glenn, just feel free to use the Q&A section, and we'll be sure to answer them at the end of his presentation. So Glenn, the floor is yours. You can take it from here.
Great, thank you so much. So again, if you haven't been a part of our previous sessions, please make sure you go back and listen and engage. Today, we're going to go over a couple of just high-level best practices. What this is what we would call our top 10 secrets to leveraging diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice into both business development and workforce development. These practices are based upon real-world experience and policies, and many of you will probably co-sign on several items on here. Some of them are more common sense, but just again, like to be able to give examples of how to be able to implement. Pardon me. Much of this is very new for most businesses based upon the work that you do. So if you are a business B2C, business to consumer, or business B2B or B2G, there's benefits in working in all spaces. So I'll jump right into it. And again, I want to be able to thank our sponsors at Penn Community Bank for sponsoring this informative webinar session that we have here. So first and foremost, again, we're going to go through our top 10 for today. Some parts are going to be redundant from our previous, so just make sure you go backwards and look at some of the previous sessions that we've had. So really, going in this particular order, number 10, be ready so you never have to get ready. So the real basis of this conversation and these webinars has been to provide everyone here with resources, insight of the opportunities that your business can leverage implementing DEIJ practices. There's a quote down below based upon if you are an athlete or in the military. This is a pretty common quote, 7 Ps. Proper planning and preparation prevents piss poor performance. So the key to this work is really to get ahead of it. This is no different than any other function of your business. DEIJ, you really want it to be built in the foundation of the work that you're doing. And so many great companies build DEIJ work into their company as if it's any other department, finance and resource development or customer service. Really important to make sure that you're ready and ahead of it. If you're going to apply these practices, being ahead of it means a couple of things. Number one, ensuring that key leadership are on board. These initiatives are very hard to be able to move forward with if only a pocket of your operation is going to support it. So you really want to make sure it's top-down support, but to be able to build it out correctly, you want to build it out from the bottom up. So that goes from supply chain in terms of warehouses, how you hire, your communication, your teams. It goes back into Are you accessing people, meeting them where they are? What's great about this webinar is that it is a webinar. If you remember the good old days before COVID, so many of our meetings were in person. So we're losing some parts by having virtual, but we're also gaining a lot as well by having it virtual. Um, Getting ready for diversity, equity, and inclusion, you always want to make sure that all the stakeholders that are within your universe are engaged. So whether it is your frontline staff, if it's your government policy, if it is the procurement opportunities, and again, if any of these keywords sound foreign to you, please make sure you go back to the first webinar, which goes over a lot of these key phrases as well. Number 9, which is huge, representation matters. I'll give you a pretty good example. Just maybe within this last month, Walmart had came out with a Juneteenth ice cream. Unfortunately, there was a lot of backlash, from that campaign, but it really served as a great opportunity to learn as well. So when that opportunity or when that product came out, the question should be, did that organization have enough people with the proper lens to evaluate that before it went public? And as we spoke in the previous webinars, we use the word lens very, very often and very frequently. So lens incorporates race, age, sexual orientation, family dynamic, retirement, working, generational, religion. There's so many different lenses that you need. So I just want to be very clear. You want as many lenses at the table, whether you're doing work locally or doing work throughout different locations across the US or its territories. You really want to make sure that you have that representation there. Representation also means that you have to be open to the idea of receiving quality feedback. And that quality feedback will allow you to navigate through challenging times and other opportunities. So again, making sure that your organization has that lens, for that lens, openness, and also has the authority and permission to speak freely to help your organization move forward. And then again, we have a couple of diagrams here. Representation needs in your media. So if you're looking to attract a certain client or an employer, does your marketing material represent the people that you're looking for? So often that's something that is missed very, very often. Look at your digital material, look at your print material, look at your website, look at your letterhead. Again, does that representation show in the things that represent your actual company? Many companies as well, it's also your frontline staff. Who are you hiring? Are they representing the company correctly? Do they represent the lenses that you're trying to bring to people to increase and do the work? So making sure that everybody who is in your frontline, middle management, upper management are all on the same page and represented correctly. The other piece is, I speak often to this, workforce development doesn't start, in our opinion, with an application. Workforce development starts at a young age. You'll see a brief image of a young person on a treadmill right there with a 1980s cell phone. But that point is there to really just illustrate, your leadership today will dictate your workforce and opportunities for the future. But you have to start early and you have to be ahead of the curve at that point in time. So again, really making sure that representation is there and being cognizant of it. And if you need that lens, it could be a strategic hire. It could be a position that's targeted with this outcome, or it could even be bringing in third-party vendors and consultants to help you as well. But you really want that lens to help you along your journey. So number 8 really does reference to our first session: master the alphabet soup of government and corporate social responsibility. So again, we often get caught up in the in every letter, MWBE, which means minority woman business enterprise, SDVOB, service disabled veteran business, DBE, that is a disadvantaged business enterprise, hub zone, RFQ, RFP. I can go on all day. You really want to fully understand what all these acronyms mean, because behind each acronym is the opportunity. So for example, when it comes to government or certain private sector opportunities, if you are not aware of how to submit an RFQ or an RFP, you have already been shunned from a great opportunity. So when you become familiar with these, then be able to hire or contract the right folks that can support you to implement them if you can't do it in-house. But you really want to, again, the alphabet soup is such a critical piece, because in every business, whether you're in hospitality or tourism, or finance or construction, there's a language in each industry. Within the DEIJ work, there's a language to that as well. So just make sure that you are caught up and you're aware, because the opportunities are behind those different letters. And again, these government opportunities, the policies that are in place throughout the world, there are things called, local content requirements. When there is an enterprise coming into your community that needs to show that they've made investments, whether it's economic or workforce, you should be aware of those policies, because that's your ability to navigate, to win business and to earn business for your company. The other piece is also contract development. RFQs and RFPs can go from 2 pages and they can go to 100 pages, based upon the actual opportunity. So if you don't already have that capability within your business, just be aware that if you're looking to acquire government funding in particular, in a variety of different locations across the world, you want to make sure that you're very familiar with this process of RFQs and RFPs. So there is a piece of public affairs knowledge that you want to keep a pulse on, based upon your industry. So for example, I think we mentioned it last time, clean energy and offshore wind has been taking the world by storm, no pun intended. But based upon which territory and which region, there are nuances in these agreements that set businesses up like yours to be able to win work, whether it's professional services or commodities or construction work, all in between. So just make sure you're aware of that. Number 7, do not create a DEIJ committee. This is a MRV policy. So often when there is a new thing for a company to bring to the table, new initiatives have a funny way at times to move really aggressively in the beginning, and they kind of lose steam and momentum afterwards. You want to make sure, as you're applying DEIJ principles to your business, that they are a part of the DNA of your company. It will pay back in dividends in terms of public perception, recruitment, retention, and business opportunities. So again, our recommendation, do not create a DEIJ committee. It is part of your business and should be a part of each function of what you do. Some organizations throw DEIJ just into HR. Some put it just into marketing, but it really is a great mover and motivator of business development when done correctly. You wouldn't create a committee to wear pants to work, right? You wouldn't create a committee to drink water, and you wouldn't create a committee to print money. So you want to make sure that DEIJ, again, it's part of what you do on a day-to-day. And also by doing that, it gives it a certain credence and long-term sustainability, that it's not just a buzzword for today. So build authentic relationships, frequency, proximity, and early. So our philosophy when it comes to relationship development is really all relationships are based upon 2 major factors, frequency and proximity. How often you speak to someone will influence the depth of your relationship and how close you are to someone. Now, in a digital virtual world, things have changed a bit. But again, your proximity could be how many webinars you're on together, how many Zooms you're on together, how many phone calls you have together. So in diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice work, there is a requirement to engage with particular communities. What you don't want to do, whether you are within that community or you're working in that community, what you never want to do is just show up because you're looking for a check. That's not coming from a right place. You really want to come at it as someone or as an entity that wants to build authentic capacity building for all of these communities and pocket what we call social equity populations. So being authentic is really important, and also being early. If this work is important to you, do the work early. Anyone who's in business development or in sales understands there's a process, and it's no different in this niche as well. Be authentic, be realistic, be present, and again, look at your company's capabilities to be able to scale that correctly. You may want to start briefly and make this an additional assignment for your business development team, or it may have to also be an opportunity where you hire someone part-time or you move someone full-time. But I can tell you from personal experience, over years of doing this work, you want to be able to do it with a real true, I always say, due north. Your compass has got to be aligned the right way to do the work effectively. And again, think of all communities. Think about rural communities. Think of suburban, urban markets. There are so many different ways and pockets of populations. Making sure that really you take the time to understand each dynamic, and really, when it comes to representation and being authentic, listening twice as much as you speak is probably the best advice I can give, because the answers are right there when you speak to the right people about what they need, and align it with your business and the opportunity. So number 5, I believe that every company, no matter how small or big, should create a corporate social responsibility strategy. It's a conversation that you can have internally. It's a conversation that you can have facilitated with a third-party company. But as I mentioned earlier about being early and being prepared, a corporate social responsibility strategy does wonders. And as we mentioned in our second webinar, and I definitely recommend everyone here going back to that, it will give you details on corporate social responsibility. But for a high level here, and there's different nuances, and there may be some different feedback, but for us, corporate social responsibility really falls between 4 buckets. It's economic responsibility. So what are you doing for your company in terms of economic impact? Whether are you hiring local residents? Are you hiring local vendors as part of your supply chain? Are you positioned in a location that helps spur economic development? So that's the economic, and you can really chop that up any way you would like. The other piece is the environment. So are you decreasing your carbon footprint? If you're a manufacturer, are you looking at upgrades and nuances that reduce, asthma rates in your community? Environmental justice communities is a big topic. Communities that don't get investments in infrastructure or don't receive a fair share in transportation opportunities and infrastructure. Ethical responsibility. Are you operating your operation with transparency? Are you moving forward with business operations that reflect your core competency to leave the world a better place? And then you have philanthropic. Again, based upon whatever is your definition of philanthropy, it could be through your company doing volunteer projects. It could be based upon the close of your end of year. You may have a percentage of your operating budget that you give back in terms of write-offs and organizations that align with your areas of focus. So really, if I could say anything, of this top 5, they're all important, but go create a corporate social responsibility strategy. There are so many companies that are partners with the Chamber of Commerce that have this already. Speak to them about how they implement it. Speak to them about the areas that are doing well and then areas that they're trying to grow and develop. But really important. And like I mentioned before, corporate social responsibility doesn't even take a lot of money based upon where you are. It could simply be, as a company, we do once a quarter, we do a community cleanup project. That's as simple of a task that you can create. You create camaraderie amongst your team. You're creating camaraderie amongst your community. And then because you're doing the work, feel free, we'll mention this in a moment, to be able to help share that information with people because you're coming from a real place to do that work. The video in the middle, which can't be seen as well, it's children and youth development. We always say the children are the future, but you can build that work into your corporate social responsibility plan as well. Number 4, press releases. Don't publish them without doing the work. This does connect directly with the being authentic and being true. Some organizations will aspirationally talk about what they plan on doing. They'll get it out in the press release. But if we did a follow-up 3 months, 6 months, 12 months later, did that public promise get met? I'll give an example. There was an organization that made a very public promise about increasing their supplier diversity spend, and I'll keep their name and the region, out of this conversation. But they blanketed a substantial amount of media about that commitment. So, as any other business development or sales department would do, we had our team reach out and say, "Hey, we are qualified. We have the bandwidth, and we would love to participate with you." And our team stayed on that commitment they made publicly. But for a whole year and a half, what came out of it was that it was just a press buzz that was pushed out there, press release. And, oh, forgive me, I'm sorry. And unfortunately, after that, nothing came of it. What it did, it left a bad taste for my company. And then, as everything else in life, that bad news travels quicker than good news. So now, anytime we mention this particular company, we look at that as being they didn't really stay true to their commitment and their promise to increase in supplier diversity. So I definitely urge everyone, if you're going to go into this work, don't send the press release. Do the work first to a certain extent, and that will lead us directly to our next part. Number 3, press releases. Do publish them when you are doing the work. Do publish them when doing the work. Don't feel bad about sharing news about you and your company doing great work in the community. And as I mentioned before, there's plenty of great organizations within the chamber here that have these programs who are doing the work. You want to celebrate the wins because you can't create momentum. You can't change. You can't recruit people. You can't spur business. You can't reiterate what you're doing without spreading that news. So don't feel bad packaging that news to share it. So, for example, some companies are really focused on working on K through 12 education to help get young people exposed and educated about opportunities in their industry. Those programs are great. They usually incorporate mentoring. They incorporate some type of investment, but the mentorship goes such a long way because we only know what we know, and half the battle is really exposure in so many of these different opportunities that are available. Well, that turned into a press circuit, group photos with the school, and now all the parents and the families who were a part of that work, because this company is doing the work, now have a warmer feeling in their heart, and now they're actually following their spending with the companies that are making that investment in their youth. And we can go into so many different great examples. I mentioned volunteerism. There are some companies that, again, they commit lots of funding and lots of human capital into doing really, really dynamic community volunteer projects. Those projects can range between environmental cleanup, they can range between larger mentorship. Some companies do a great job of aligning what they do professionally and doing that on a volunteer basis for other companies or even nonprofits that could use the support too. So there's a lot of different areas that you can really implement that. And if you need someone to speak to, please let us know as well. But again, when you do the work, it will absolutely help you to help push out other opportunities as well. Now, how you publish that will range between traditional media, legacy media, digital media. You'll have to find your way in terms of what works in your particular market and community. And you'll also see a brief video of a typewriter for those of us who remember those days as well. Number three, don't stop being the teacher and the student. The reality of this work is that the policies and opportunities truly change monthly, and monthly is probably not an aggressive response. They change weekly. The principles of diversity, equity, and justice, inclusion are the same, but the opportunities and especially the funding and things that are happening right now are rolling out every single week. And so you really want to make sure that you're tapped into your industry and then tapped into the opportunities at the same time. So for example, there's several large federal funding grants for infrastructure, construction, actually for tourism as well, that there are many people who are going to be listening to this recording will be able to apply for. So just really make sure, again, you're wired into it. A bit of advice I give to folks all the time, leverage Google Alerts. Google Alerts is a notification system that you can set on a weekly or instantly or daily report. And all you need to do is enter the keywords of what is important to you in your business. So for us, for example, and I'm picking on offshore wind because we're doing a bunch of work in that space, the word offshore wind will put into a Google alert because those news publications come out often. We only receive that report once a week. But because Google stores so much information and publishes through news, we automatically know what's happening instantly on a weekly debrief. But that's another way that we are the student to always make sure that we're absorbing the right information from the proper qualified sources to help us navigate through the waters to get the work done. So again, being a teacher and being a student, really, really critical, but just really pay attention to the policies and opportunities that are coming your way. And for many of you, I'm not sure the composition here of who's in nonprofit or who's in for-profit, but the opportunities are really coming out from everywhere: government, private sector, and nonprofit. So just make sure you're paying attention to that. Number two, and I use this word with nothing but love in my heart: give grace to new vendors, employees, and each other. I use that word often because in this work, especially diversity, equity, inclusion, you want to be able to, the premise of it often is to help raise all ships. And so the reality of it is, based upon what's going on, there are some people who may not be at your level today, but you're building them up and you're creating an opportunity to get them there. So giving grace is really important. Also, if you're going to hire someone in your team who this may be new, or you're adding this to someone's current job description, giving grace is really important. We've seen circumstances where folks will ask for everything, every opportunity, every bit of information. They'll give it to someone on their team, and because they don't see a certain turnaround in 2 weeks, they're incredibly upset with what their team member did. You have to give them grace, because this work doesn't happen overnight. But I can definitely guarantee you it will have a long lasting presence for you in terms of recruitment, retention, and business development. But give everybody grace, especially as it pertains to local businesses being able to participate in your own supply chain. So again, many of the corporate organizations, some of which are members of the chamber, have their own supplier diversity programs. If you are a business that provides a product or services, you want to go register with them to let them know that you are a business who wants to do business with them. So whether it's a bank or whether it is a construction company, they want to hear from you. And it's okay. They may start with a job that only starts at 5,000, and then you progress to 10, and then you progress to 50, and then you progress to 100, to a million, to 5 million, and 10. But we all have to start somewhere. So just make sure you pass that grace on to your vendors, to your employees, and to each other. There is a lot going on in the world, and whether it's depression, or whether it's challenges with childcare, or just we went through this entire pandemic where there was a lot of loss. Passing that grace on, for me, is just the right thing to do, because we can have all the business aspirations, but then life gets in the way. So just being aware of that, and again, passing that grace on is really important. And then lastly, and again, in no particular order, people vote, forgive me for that typo, with their feet and with their wallets, okay? People vote with their feet and with their wallets. And so I'll clarify what that actually means. So in 2022, we say people vote with their feet means everyone is overtaxed and moving incredibly fast, but you can really see what's important to them by two factors: where they are and where they spend their time. Now, in the digital age, we can definitely use the word feet and also say they vote with their eyes, as our phones become our main source of information. But where you're located really says a lot about what's important to you, because we all make time for the things that are important. People also vote with their wallets. Now, whether you are using your credit card or cash or debit card or Bitcoin, where you spend your money says a lot about what's important to you. It also says a lot about your clients and your customers and where they're putting their money. So the question I ask each of you is, if this work is important to you, take a self-assessment and look at where do you go and where do you spend your money in your business, and does that reflect your aspirations for the work we're speaking about here, and really for everything else that you're doing? Because if you take a good self-audit of that, you'll really see what's important to you today, and you can be very intentional about where you are tomorrow. So as we talk about business development through the lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, I would say take a look at all your vendors. How many of them are coming from your local community within a certain territory? How many of them are coming from ownership of women? How many of them are a variety of different minority or social economic groups? How much of the funding do you receive or business comes from government compared for consumer, compared to business? So really, again, people vote with their feet and their wallets, and that will tell a lot about where you want to go. So that really is a high level for today's conversation. Again, I really do appreciate all of you for taking the time. As I mentioned before, today you voted with your feet by way of your phone or your laptop. So I appreciate you taking the time for this hour, 45 minutes to speak and chat. I highly recommend you going back to the previous webinars, because you'll see more context in terms of opportunities and ways to navigate, find opportunities, keywords, alphabet soup of all this work as well. Really important to be locked in. We have a few more sessions. So we're going to go into some really fun content going into the summertime as well. But we really want to, again, absolutely thank our sponsors and thank the Chamber as well for putting together this great opportunity to share this information. And this work really is transferable everywhere. It is a topic that's not going away. We are living in a global economy, a global world. So again, the more work you put into this, I can definitely tell you, it absolutely opens up a considerable amount of opportunity for everybody. So again, thank you so much for your time. You can contact us directly. Our information is on the screen.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks. Thanks again, Glenn. A wonderful presentation. And again, just to reiterate, if you if you registered for this webinar, you're automatically registered for our subsequent. We have 2 more coming up in the coming months over the summer. And if you didn't get to check out our first 2 sessions, just shoot us an email at info@NPR Chamber, and we can send you the recording so you can check out this content. Just great content. A couple of my takeaways were One, I think a lot of these bigger businesses kind of implement DEI initiatives simply to check off a box and to not actually put in the work. So I think the stuff that the info that you're providing, the content will allow companies and businesses to really properly implement these type of initiatives and stuff, as opposed to just kind of, like you said, when you were talking about committees and stuff, you kind of check off a box. Maybe you kind of have a lot of energy at the beginning, but true impactful work doesn't really get implemented, and it kind of fizzles out over time. So that was kind of one of my key takeaways. And then the other takeaway I had was simply just that it's a long-term effort. I know a lot of companies are kind of quick to change directions if they don't see immediate results. And again, a lot of the content you provided just give you the tools to be consistent and make a long-term effort to start seeing those type of results. So again, just wonderful stuff. So thank you again, Glenn, for presenting today.
Oh, no, thank you so much. And I know we have a little bit of time. I'll leave you with this extra note. And again, I don't know the full dynamic of or the composition of his current who's watching for today, but I'll pick on what industry will I pick on? Let's say your company sells utility products. We'll use that example. If your company doesn't do work with government or doesn't do certain procurement work or set aside work, if you just focus and say, okay, who are all the companies in our region? Let me contact each of them. Most of them have some type of database or registration that's required to become a vendor with them. Let's say you go after 20 of them at that point. Your company may fit that mold to help them meet their goals. You hit them all up. You apply for them just like you would pay for social media, or you would pay for marketing or newspaper or TV. Believe it or not, the application process for many of these opportunities are actually simpler or easier than just doing direct to market marketing the entire time. And if you really kind of focus in on it, it's all timelined. What will happen is that you'll apply for something today, and it's happened to us. You'll apply for something today, and some of these opportunities you won't hear back for 14 days. Some of them you won't hear back for 30 days. If it's the bigger stuff, some of it you won't hear back for 6 months. But the reality of it is, if you don't do the work today, you're not even at the table for tomorrow. And some of the best contracts and opportunities we've received, they took, once they were submitted, they took 3, 6, 9 months for them to get vetted. And then everything starts moving very quickly afterwards. So you want to make sure that you have obviously a flow of business to help, fill those gaps, but really make sure again that you're in the game. And again, without knowing everyone's business, on the call today, I can give you more specific examples, but every single business, whether you sell ice cream or lumber, can benefit from this work.
Absolutely. No, that's a wonderful point. They say, I think the saying goes, the best time to start was 6 months ago. The second best time is today.
Absolutely.
So again, thanks again, Glenn. For everybody on the call, we'll be sending out a copy of the recording and the presentation. And again, if you have any further questions, want to have these conversations, you can reach out to Glenn and MRV directly, or you can reach out to us at info@nprchamber.org. But again, thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you all for the next session coming up in June. So it'll be coming up on the first Tuesday of July at the same time. So again, we'll send out the reminders and stuff. So thank you all again. Have a wonderful day.
Take care.